Good evening, everybody. It's Hoz. I am going to be doing a live broadcast, which is going to be going out across my YouTube channel, should be going through my Twitter channel, and it should also be going out through my Facebook as well. So yesterday, or last night, I was on a Twitter space, Mario's Twitter space, and I was discussing with a person called Malcolm, who I met in the space, who seemed quite knowledgeable about what's the potential of the oil fields being recovered and if there was an attack on them. So to put this into place, I've decided that I'm going to do a podcast on the possibilities. So, I just want to say that, we live in a world that thinks that it can push and push and push without consequences. A world where Israel can bomb at will, where the United States can threaten entire nations, and where the Gulf is treated like a spigot to be turned on and off at will. But there is a red line, and people need to understand it's not a nuclear one. It's actually oil. And you need to understand it's not because it's a powerful thing. It's because it's a fragile thing. And it's something that the Iranians have already said is effectively the nuclear option for Iran. Because it holds the entire world together, quietly, invisibly, and without question. And if you destroy it, you don't get a war. What you get is civilization collapse. I'm not just talking economic, I'm talking financial, I'm talking apocalypse. So imagine this situation. The US decides to bomb Iran's oil terminals, its nuclear facilities, and Israel decides it's going to destroy all of Iran's gas fields and refineries, and Tehran decides enough is enough. It's going to unleash saturation missile strikes, and not at cities, not at civilians, because it's going to be an existential threat to its existence. It's going to hit the oil fields. It's going to hit the lifeline of the global economy, which is the Gulf that we all come from, all of us from this area. Overnight, every major oil field, from Saudi Arabia to the UAE, from Kuwait to Qatar, from Bahrain to the Kurdish regions of Iraq and Syria, will all be set to blaze. Every single export terminal gone. Storage depots are burning and have exploded. Pipelines are fractured. Refineries are lit up like tinderboxes. Everything there is explosive. Add to that mines all over the Straits of Hormuz, and that shuts that down. 20% of the world's oil flows, and it will get closed because Iran is not going to allow other people to make money and survive and thrive if it feels as a nation it's going to get destroyed. And you need to understand that this isn't a theory here. This is the nuclear deterrent of oil. No mushroom clouds will be going up. No radioactive fallout will take place. But there will be black clouds from oil burning. And it will be the end of the industrial life. And without a single nuclear weapon being used by anyone, that will be the end of the way civilization has been going. This is going to affect up to 1.2 billion people, thrown into an energy chaos situation they didn't create. Winter deaths across Europe are going to take place. Supply chains are going to be shattered. Food prices where you can get them delivered are going to be quadrupled. This is what happened in 2008 when we had 30–40% increase. When oil went up, the price of food went up. You need to understand that nations collapsing, all because the world played stupid games. And this is what we're talking about, the world playing stupid games. And it's now facing the ultimate prize. This is what we're talking about, and this is where it all begins. We need to consider what it is we're trying to achieve here. How many oil fields do you think it's going to take for it to just destroy everything? I mean, the Arabian Peninsula is nothing, it's just a desert. But it is the beating heart of the global oil system. Within its sands is the largest concentration of petroleum infrastructure on planet Earth. It's vulnerable, it's exposed, and it's critically clustered. They are all close to each other. They're all attached. Let's just go through them all so we understand what we're talking about here. And bear in mind, what I'm telling you are places that will automatically be on the target list. Saudi Arabia, Ghawar, the single largest conventional oil field in the world. Safaniya, largest offshore oil field. Abqaiq, critical processing center, which was hit before by drone attacks. Sheba, Khurais, high capacity, high pressure production zones. Saudis, Ras Tanura, Yanbu, Jubail, and Jazan terminals handle over 7 million barrels a day export. You know what that is? That's 7% of the world's oil gone. United Arab Emirates, Zakum, Babu Housa or something, massive fields feeding the Ruwais refinery. Jabal Ali, it's an export hub, I think, and a refinery center as well. These are all 2 missiles, 3 missiles, because they are all so explosive. Kuwait has only got Burgan, which is the second largest oil field globally. Its refineries are Mina al-Ahmadi, Mina Abdullah al-Zur. It's not very much. This is 2.7 million barrels a day. Qatar's got 2 places, Al Shaheen and Dukhan. And it's got Ras Laffan and Em Said. These terminals process oil and gas for export. It's not going to take very many missiles to start that. Qatar is responsible for LNG output. 20% of the global liquefied natural gas is coming from Qatar. It's not going to take very much to hit one of these places for it to have a chain effect across the whole of the Ras Laffan field and destroy everything. It doesn't take a lot. Bahrain's got like a Wali field or something, and it's got the Citra refinery. It's a nothing size, but again, it's about Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, all of them taking everything off them, because if Iran's going to go, they're going to do the same to everybody. The Kurds in Syria, Tak, Sheikhan, the pipelines into Turkey and Jordan, all exposed. They're all high value and they are easy to destroy pipelines. And I'm going to assume at this stage is that Iran is already a target and it's been destroyed, which is why it's going to do what it's going to do, because they've promised that if you attack us, we're going to attack you back. If we're going to be put into the Stone Age financially, we're going to do the same to you. So this is the situation. We're talking about the total capacity at risk here, more than 30 million barrels a day of production. That's nearly 1/3 of all global oil, nearly half of all the global exports. Destroy this system and you're not just slowing trade, you're ending it. You're ending transport, fertilizer, medicine, plastics, and agriculture. Because all of that begins with oil. These aren't just fields and pipes here. They're literally the central nervous system of modern life in 2025. Break it and the body of civilization stops responding. That's the fire that people are playing with when they keep pressing buttons on each other in the Gulf. It is a tinderbox, and this tinderbox needs to be looked after by responsible adults. And people attacking each other the way Iran and Israel are at the moment is not responsible adults. Let's just work out how much oil is lost. So let's get rid of the polite language here. If Iran retaliates by targeting the Gulf, we don't have a crisis. We have a full-on hemorrhage of global oil. The world today consumes between 99 to 102 million barrels of oil per day. That number isn't optional. It's the baseline for survival. You need to understand, it fuels transport, power generation, the petrochemicals, all the agriculture. Everything you can think of modern day is based and run on oil. Heating, medical supplies, medical logistics. It's like if you remove the Gulf basically, plus Iran and Kurdish northern oil, you immediately lose between 25 to 30 million barrels a day. That's not a ripple. That's a black hole in the global energy system. Do you understand me? It's like it's not something that you can come back from. So I'm going to break it down into regions for you, okay? Saudi Arabia alone contributes 10 million barrels a day, of which 7 million is exported. The UAE pumps around 3.2 million. Nearly all of it is shipped through vulnerable terminals, people. Kuwait contributes 2.7 million, with heavy crude critical to Asian refineries. They need that. Qatar and Bahrain combined add another 1.5 to 2 million. But more importantly, Qatar is the second largest exporter of LNG in the world. And if Ras Laffan is hit, global gas markets will melt down. Iran pumps about 3.5 million barrels. But I don't know what to tell you. Because of the sanctions on it, and because it's wartime, those barrels may matter and may be allowed to come back. But I think they'll all be destroyed well before then. So what is the point here is what I'm trying to say. So if we also let me add the Kurdish as well. The Kurdish oil routes through Iraq and Syria. So you're looking at another 0.5 million to 1 million barrels. And the pipelines from Taktak to Cayenne and from El Omar to Jordan, they'd be wiped out by just a handful of drones. It doesn't take a lot to do those because they're fully exposed, pipelines open to the air. So what's left effectively would be Basra. Why? Because I don't think Iran would attack Basra because it's in Iraq and it's a friendly nation. It would destroy the Gulf, but I don't think it would destroy Basra. That means the world would have, or Iraq would be 4 million barrels a day. You've got US shale currently producing around 12 to 13 million barrels a day. But that shale oil is not scalable in the short term. I'm going to come back to that later on because I'm doing a section on shale oil as well and how that works, okay? So let's get the actual subtractions here. So if 100 million daily need 30 million to 25 million, gone. That leaves 70 million. That means a shortfall of 25 to 30 million permanently and immediately. This is not taking time. This would be an immediate thing that would happen. And that's assuming zero sabotage, no secondary attacks, no tanker blockades, no political panic, which, let's be honest, is delusional. Even if one missile lands on Ras Tanura, insurance for the entire Gulf shipping corridor disappears overnight. You don't need to sink the ships, you just need the threat. And the world just pulls back. And if the Straits of Hormuz is closed, it's game over. That's 20% of all that moves by sea, gone. It's going to be trapped in the Gulf, untouchable. There's nothing you can do. So the question isn't whether oil markets will react. The question is whether they'll actually survive. Because no amount of market confidence can overcome the physics of that many barrels of oil missing from the world markets. There are no spare tankers. There's no miracle reserves. There's no secret pipelines waiting to be opened. Once these barrels disappear off the world, they don't come back the next month, not the next year, and most probably not in 5, as I'm going to explain. Because rebuilding is not a joke. Let's look at how many missiles to bring us to the end of the oil civilization it's going to take. What people need to understand is about the oil infrastructure. It's not like a power plant. It's not like a water pipe. It doesn't just stop when you hit it. It explodes. It creates firestorms. And it takes months if it's a light damage, years to rebuild it. And it's designed to be vulnerable. Structures are not made to be resilient to explosions and damage. Because oil must be under pressure. Through complex networks, it goes at scale and at speed, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without interruption. Which means a single successful strike can trigger a cascading failure across the whole of the network. So how many missiles do you think it would take to wipe the Gulf's energy system off the map? The answer, according to multiple defense analysts and military planners, is between 200 to 250. That's it. 200 precision strikes across oil fields. Terminals and refineries, all of them will be gone, and you're done. Now, if you bear in mind, Iran launched 200 of these towards Israel in one night. So it's not beyond imagination to think this would happen. So I just want to, let's break the numbers down a bit more so that you understand. There are roughly 42 high-value oil-related targets in Saudi Arabia alone. Okay, and these are the things that are important to remember. So the processing hubs like Al Abqaiq, the export terminals like Ras Tanura, the desalination dependent refineries like Yanbu and Jizan, pipelines connecting Qawara, Shayba, Khurais, and Safaniya. Hitting 8 to 10 sites in Saudi Arabia can alone knock out more than half of its export capacity right there. That does not take a lot of missiles. The UAE's got another 10 to 15 targets. The Kuwaiti triangle of Mina Abdullah, Ala Ahmadi, and Al Zur refineries, it's nothing. Another 6 to 8, it's done. Qatar's LNG mega hub, Arastafan, strike that and you'll not only end its oil export, you'll cripple 20% of the global LNG flow. Throw in Bahrain Sitra, the Ceyhan pipeline, terminus in Turkey, and the Basra export facilities as secondary targets, and the map begins to glow. Now you have to ask yourself, does Iran have the firepower to do this? Can it deliver these military missile systems to this area? The short answer is yes, it can. Iran holds the largest and most diverse missile stockpile in the region, including the Fatah 110, 110s. They're short-range precision strike, ideal for oil terminals. Zulafqar, medium-range ballistic missiles, 700 kilometers. Iran is not that far away. The Shahab 3s, capable of striking anywhere in Saudi Arabia and UAE. Sumar and Hoveyziya, cruise missiles with low radar profiles, and they go under the radar systems and they'll go wherever they need to go. Plus they have the armed Shahed, the 136s, which are used successfully in Ukraine and Syria. And don't forget, Iran has already demonstrated the capability in 2019 when a dozen drones and the cruise missiles took half of Saudi Arabia's oil output off for weeks. No US retaliation, no real deterrent. And that was a warning to Saudi Arabia. That whole thing took 17 minutes to do, from the time it was released to the time it hit. Now imagine they used 200 of these systems in one night. What happens here? Do you know what a BLEV explosion is? It's a boiling liquid expanding vapor event. It's basically, it creates a rolling fireball hundreds of meters wide. And any storage tanks go up first. Then the gas and oil separation units. Then the pressurized cracking towers. The pipelines will erupt, feeding fires from miles away till this basically it's the fuel that it needs to burn for days. All the export terminals are engulfed in fire. And here's the other thing. Most of this infrastructure is above ground, unarmored, spread wide, made of thin, heat-sensitive steel, no bomb shelter, no countermeasures, no time. Once the first missile hits, it's too late. It's done. This is the sensitivity of the oil that we have in our region. So you don't need nukes to break the world. Just targeted precision, which the Iranians have, and the leadership with nothing left to lose. And I promise you, Iran, under an existential threat of annihilation, has promised that it will pull that trigger without hesitation. Because if it thinks it's going to die, it will make sure the global system dies with it. It also means that it's taught the world that we did tell you this is what's going to happen. And the Iranians have telegraphed this and have said that we are going to do this. You attack us, we're going to level every one of you at bases. You got 12 to 13 bases. Every single one of them is going to go. And as far as the Iranians are concerned, every single one of these countries in the Middle East are complicit because they've left these people, these Americans in their bases, to basically use as forward operating bases to help Israel. You're part of the problem. So, you know, and it hurts me to say it because I love Qatar, but that's the way it is. So let's get one thing clear from the start. You need to understand that oil fields aren't like Lego sets. Refineries are not like warehouses where I built one in 6 months. You don't sweep up the debris and plug the pipes back in. You need specialized engineers, military security. You need high-grade steel. You need multi-ton compressors, digitally integrated control systems, global shipping logistics to get A to B. And the kicker? Most of it's manufactured in countries that won't be functioning properly either. So we're clear, yeah? This stuff can't be built in Qatar. I'm going to take it step by step. Oil fields damage beyond the rubble event, yeah? In a peacetime and it's under stable conditions, oil fields take 3 to 6 months. Okay? If it's in a bad war situation or no oil and no infrastructure to bring the oil and bring the steel and everything else, it's 12 to 36 months for a major site rebuild. And if it's multi-site rebuild reconstruction with pressuring, balancing, rain injection, compressor calibration, but in a world where you got to bear in mind the fuel is going to be very scarce, logistics are paralyzed, and the war will be finished, but those timelines will easily double. Iran will still most probably be sending commandos to carry on and cripple things as best as they can. So The revised timeline for me would be the 3 to 6 months would become 6 to 12 months. The complete site reconstruction, which was 12 to 30, will now 36 months, will most likely become 18 to 48 months. The multi-site rebuild from 3 to 5 will become 10, 8 to 10. And that's if you've got global coordination. Why? Because these fields need oil to rebuild oil. No fuel equals to no drills, no compressors, no maintenance, fleets, nothing. No spare parts. You need to repair your fuel supply, and you can't do it without fuel. The refineries are the real problem because they're the choke points here. The industrial bottleneck that no one wants to talk about. Refineries, these refineries are not built in Riyadh. They're not made in Abu Dhabi. And they sure as hell aren't assembled in a garage in someone's house or in a military base. You need high-spec components. You need precision machinery and calibration systems that are sourced in only a few countries. Germany makes pressure vessels, control systems, and instrumentation. Not every country's got that engineering. Sorry about that. Japan makes the what is it called? The cracking catalysts, the electronic sensors, and the robotic calibrations. That's what Japan makes. South Korea, I think, is the modular refinery units, industrial valves, advanced compressors. And then the United States. The United States makes the turbines, fluid control systems, and automates the safety networks as well. So this is 4 countries that are in all different parts of the world that need to deliver everything. So they need to move this equipment that you need by sea freight, container access, diesel-powered logistics, ports that need to be moved as well, engineers with visas, the ones that these countries would be able to free up to come and build, a stable destination country. None of that is guaranteed during an oil famine. We don't know what the place is going to look like. And here's what's going to happen in crisis. Germany and South Korea will most probably lock down exports to prioritize domestic energy. Shipping corridors will be blocked, delayed, or militarized. I think the international orders will face 24 to 36 months worth of waiting lists. The cost of a single refinery rebuild, 10 to 20 billion per site. Now multiply that across 20 plus refineries destroyed in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and Qatar, and Iran. You're looking at 300 billion reconstruction bill. And that's a decade-long global mobilization effort because it's not going to get done on their own. And bear in mind, most of these nations are going to be at war with each other because of what's happened. Iran may have collapsed. The Arab countries maybe would have collapsed. People would have maybe have turned on each other. They'll be under sanctions. And people, you think Iran's going to be able to build a refinery so they can bring it online to start providing fuel for the world? We're going to need UN Security Council resolutions, military peacekeeping forces, international reconstruction waivers, a multinational logistics corridor through an active war zone, which it will be. I don't know. That doesn't sound very fast to me. I don't think it sounds fast. Does that sound fast to you? I mean, I just want to know, what would it take to even begin the reconstruction? Even one refinery or one of these major oil fields that you need. We need global coordination under emergency law. Who's going to do that? There's going to have to be sanctions waivers for Iran, Venezuela, and possibly Russia, are all under huge sanctions. Rapid manufacturing expansion in Asia, while those countries are also on low fuel. Fast track engineering visas, project insurance, ship guarantees. Bear in mind, Iran's not going to want to do anything to help here, I don't think. And it's going to have to be a piece where Iran is now on board, is the way I look at it. So the maritime security convoys for all the Gulf region ports, and if one of those breaks down, the whole process will stall and will start again. So let's just end this fantasy right now. If things go bad, we'll just rebuild. No, we won't. We don't have the fuel. We don't have the time. We don't have the industrial peace to get it done. Once these facilities are gone, they're going to be gone for half a decade at the very least. And that is the most optimistic estimate. And I want to now go and speak about strategic reserves and why they're not going to save anyone. And I'm going to have to explain it because there's different parts to this whole podcast. When people keep hearing about oil shortages, they say, don't worry, we have reserves. Yes, we do have oil reserves. But let's talk about what the actual reserves means in numbers, in days, in actual reality. The world's largest consumers have spent decades building up their strategic petroleum reserves. And they're only to be used in emergencies only. They're only for emergencies. But here's the catch. They were designed to handle regional disruptions, not a global production collapse like this. There is not enough capacity in the world. So let's see how much everyone has. The countries with strategic oil reserves. The United States got 370 million barrels. China's got 400 to 500 million. Japan's got 324. India, South Korea, EU, 300 between them combined. The total global strategic stockpile, I think, is 1.5 to 1.6 billion. That's how much is sitting there in reserve. And let's plug those numbers into the system. If the world is suddenly missing 25 to 30 million barrels per day, how long do those reserves last, do you think? Best case scenario is going to be 60 to 70 days. You can stretch it with rationing, blackouts, fuel bans, maybe 90 days, and then they're gone. Not low, by the way, all gone. There'll be nothing left for you to fall back on as your strategic reserves. And this is assuming, you need to remember, perfect coordination, no panic withdrawals, no hoarding, no sabotage, no breakdown of logistics. That's not how humans behave in crisis. Just look at what happened when we ran out of toilet paper. Now imagine it's diesel fuel and the queues that will be outside places. And here's the ugly truth. These strategic reserves aren't even true buffers. They're old stock, already refined, already stored, and not easily replaced once used. They sit in salt caverns. They degrade over time. They rely on functioning delivery networks. If pipelines are bombed, it's gone. If refineries are offline, it's gone. If roads are blocked, it's gone. That oil will stay buried. And don't forget the legal side. Many countries legally can't export their reserves, so it becomes their critical reserves for themselves. They're there basically for domestic use only. So even if one country has fuel, they're not going to share it with anyone. They'll use it to stop their own economy from collapsing. Because there is no global sharing protocol out there, people. When that fire starts, every nation is going to lock its doors and say, I'm all right, Jack. So yes, we have reserves, but they were built for stock absorption, not amputation. They're designed to buy time, not solve the problem. And time isn't something that we'll have. We will not have that time. There's a lot of American people that think that the US shale will save them. I've got a spoiler alert for you. No, not even close. Every think tank, every Western analyst, every oil exec with a lapel mic will say it. The Gulf goes offline, the US will slap in. You're going to slap in, step in. What are you going to do? It's an actual fairy tale of modern energy policy that the idea that America's shale fields from Texas all the way to North Dakota can just crank up the taps, flood the market, and save the world. Let's break that delusion for you this second. These are the numbers. Today's US shale produces about 13 million barrels per day. It's the single largest oil producer on earth, no doubts. But even at full capacity, it's already tapped. There is no secret reserves of untapped rigs, no phantom workers, no idle sand mines. What do you see? What you see is what you get. That's all you've got. The actual capacity to take the oil from one place to another through the pipelines is maxed out already anyway. So even if you were to be able to produce more, you'd have to build the infrastructure to be able to deliver it to places, and you can't. So let's pretend they try to ramp it up. What's the best case scenario? With maximum investment, full government support, no weather delays, no steel shortages, no labor strikes. Maybe the US could add 1.5 to 2 million barrels per day. And how long does that take to come online? 12 to 24 months. We'll be into a 24-month cycle of suffering for planet Earth. Meanwhile, the global market is still short by 25 to 30 million barrels per day. That means even with a miracle, the shale could replace maybe 6% of the missing oil. That's it, people. That's it. And that's fantasy land, if you ask me. Because in reality, shale is already hitting its plateau. And here's why. Fracking wells decline fast. Most lose 70% of their output within the first year. It takes huge amounts of water, which is already in short supply. You need diesel fuel trucks to move sand, chemicals, and equipment around. Rigs require really high maintenance, compressors, and they need these imported parts and trained crews. None of that scales in a fuel-starved world. If diesel's gone, if sand transport is stalled, if drilling steel is stuck in a German port, shale doesn't ramp up, it winds down. And that is the reality. And there's another issue as well, which is the US infrastructure. It just isn't built to scale. These pipelines run inland. Gulf Coast ports are already at, as I said earlier, at capacity. Most refineries are set for light sweet crude, not heavy sour, which means even if shale comes online, most of the world can't use it without retooling their refineries. And guess what? Rebooting a refinery takes 18 to 36 months minimum. I'm giving you these numbers, facts and figures because I want you to understand it's not an easy thing. And I'm doing this podcast to make people understand time is the most critical thing here. If it's not destroyed in war, yeah, or locked in sanctions, simply out of funding here. I just want you to understand none of this will get done in time. So no, the US shale will not save you. It will not fill the void. It's not going to replace 30 million barrels of daily supply. While the Gulf burns, it will stall. It will underperform. And it will remind the world that you can't frack your way out of global collapse. And then I need to talk to you about renewables and nuclear and how everyone may think that suddenly they're going to be able to do something. The answer is not now, not soon, and not in the way that you need or any time in the next 10 years. You need to understand when the oil stops, the optimistic say, we'll just switch to clean energy, guys. It's time anyway. We need to go to clean energy. Crisis equals to opportunity, people. So let me just be absolutely clear, yeah? You won't be able to build a wind turbine in a blackout. You don't install solar panels in a war zone. And you sure as hell don't plug a combined harvester into the grid to go and do all your farming for you. All of these things need oil. Wind and solar, yeah, are powerful. They are vital. They are the future. But they're also intermittent, inflexible, and they take years to scale. A typical utility scale solar farm takes 18 to 36 months from planning to production. A major wind farm, 3 to 5 years. Look at how I'm telling you about time all the time, yeah? Because I'm trying to explain the kind of time that we as humanity are going to suffer if this continues. You need steel. You need rare earths. You need transport trucks. You need concrete foundations for all of these things. Massive installation teams, all of which are powered by, you guess what, oil, because we don't have the Tesla trucks yet. We don't have everything running on electricity. Everything runs on oil. And you need to remember, wind and solar provide electricity. They're not going to provide you jet fuel. They're not going to provide us with diesel. The heavy freight capacity that we've got, it doesn't run on electricity. Plastics, fertilizer, petrochemicals, all of them are made by oil. You can't, run the global shipping fleet on sunlight. You can't grow wheat in Punjab or Kansas without ammonium-based fertilizers, which is made from natural gas. There isn't an energy transition here. It's going to be a full-blown energy collapse. What about nuclear, guys? What about nuclear? It's stable. It's carbon-free. It runs day and night. Sounds promising, doesn't it? Until you look closer. Building a single nuclear reactor requires a 10-year timeline, up to 50 to 70 billion US dollars in financing, hundreds of tons of concrete, reactor-grade steel, international regulatory approval, an uninterrupted global supply chain. Uninterrupted. Uranium enrichment facilities, security and transport for radioactive material. There are no countries on Earth that can roll out a nuclear weapon at the scale and speed required to replace 30 million barrels per day of oil. And even if they could, electricity does not replace kerosene or bitumen, or the 20,000 byproducts oil provides to modern industry. You can't just flick a switch from petrol to protons. It just doesn't work. And I need you to understand, here's the brutal truth of it. No renewable, no reactor, no green dream can save you in the first 12 months of a total oil supply collapse. We're too early in the transition, too dependent on fossil infrastructure and fuels, and too slow to adapt without fuel to power the adaptation itself. We don't have the oil to be able to do the adaptation. Let me put it even more plainly for you. You don't build solar panels and plants without oil-fueled mining trucks. You don't erect wind towers without diesel-powered cranes. You don't erect the wind towers themselves without diesel-powered cranes. You don't lay electrical grids without plastic-coated cabling. That's made from oil. Oil is not just a fuel, it's the substance of modern life. And no matter how green your intentions are, if the Gulf burns, you won't have time to innovate. You'll have to be busy trying your best to keep the lights on and the children fed. That's all that's going to happen. I need to explain to you the collapse timeline from strike night to global system failure. This is the most important part. So let's walk through this nightmare, not as a headline, but as a calendar I'm doing here for you. This is what happens when Iran retaliates. The Gulf ignites, and around 30 million barrels of oil vanish overnight. And let me show you the dominoes. Day 1 to 7, the impact phase, the missiles land, infrastructure burns, export terminals go dark, oil futures will spike to $500 a barrel within a few hours. Panic is going to grip global markets. Straits of Hormuz are going to be sealed. Insurers pull coverage for Gulf shipping. Tankers turn around mid-route. Port activity in the Asian halls. Stock markets will begin to spiral. The price of diesel doubles by the morning. Every government's going to start calling OPEC, but OPEC is not around anymore because OPEC is on fire. That's day 1 to 7. Day 8 to 30. The reserve phase, strategic petroleum reserves are activated. The US, let's say, releases 1 million barrels a day. China and India follow. Emergency shipping contracts are signed. Airlines are going to cancel long-haul routes because that's not going to be enough. Governments are going to try to control the narrative. They say, this is temporary, stay calm. But we know by week 3 or 4, fuel stations in Europe are going to be empty. In Nigeria and Pakistan, they've never had reserves to begin with. By week 4, blackouts begin in major cities. Food prices will jump 40% as they did in 2008. Manufacturing output plunges. Protests begin in at least a dozen countries. That's up to day 30. Day 31 to 90, the depletion phase. The strategic reserves start to run dry. Diesel rationing begins. Agriculture is going to grind to a halt. No fuel for tractors, no fertilizers, no logistics. Supermarkets in landlocked nations begin to go empty. Fuel theft and black market refineries explode. And by day 60, Europe faces its first mass heating shortage. Winter's coming. Hospitals in the global south begin shutting down services. Ambulances are going to run out of fuel. Pharmaceutical supply chains, like the supply chain for them, is going to collapse. India and Egypt are going to impose fuel lockdowns. Bangladesh will most certainly declare martial law. These are all very realistic things that I'm telling you that could happen. Day 91 to 180, the breakdown phase. The global trade enters what I'm going to say to you is going to be free fall, because container shipping is going to drop by 80%. Rail networks prioritize food only. Airlines halt non-essential flights. The global fertilizer trade collapses with it. Next season's crops will go. The urban protests in the countryside will become riots. Border checkpoints are going to become siege points. Nations are going to blame each other. In Africa, it's going to be famine. In Europe, it's going to be ration books, cold homes, and political breakdown. In America, the fuel lines and civil unrest, where 320 million people with guns governments are going to begin falling. And it's not going to be to coups, by the way. It's going to be to the incompetence, the lack of resilience for this kind of situation. That's what's going to break the world's order and the governments. Year 1 to 3, I would say the long emergency. The world would have adapted to the pain. Cities are going to shrink. Their functioning zones are going to become smaller. Diesel's going to be worth more than gold. Electricity is cut 12 hours a day, as it is in most third world countries. Millions of people are going to become climate refugees. But this time, fleeing energy collapse. Oil-dependent nations default on loans. Sorry, that was my phone just going off telling me it's nearly midnight. And no one is going to have rebuilt. I don't think a single refinery will be built by year 3, because those things are going to take about 2 to 3 years, because the equipment is still sitting in South Korea being built, and there's no fuel to ship it anymore. So the capacity that needs to be built is sitting back in those places. So you're not going to get an apocalypse in a flash. It's going to be in phases. And each one is going to be worse than the last. Each one testing whether humanity adapts or it fails. And we need to look at the numbers on humanity. So the impacts on humanity, what's it going to be? It's going to be famine, collapse. And I think the death of moral authority, I would say. And that is an important thing. This is where the numbers become bodies, where theory becomes suffering. Because when oil collapses, everything else will follow. I've set it out for you. It's really easy, methodical to understand it. I want to count the cost. I think over 1.5 billion people live in countries that are net fuel importers. Over 2 billion people depend on food imports, subsidized by diesel-driven logistics, which will not be around. Over 3 billion lives in regions that need fertilizer made from gas and oil. No oil equals to no food, to no transport, to no medicine, to no clean water, and to no modern state to look after the people. Africa will be the first to be hit. It will be hit first. The diesel shortages mean no tractors, no grain transport, no medical shipments, no fuel for water purification, no access to refrigeration for vaccines. And I think within 60 days, famine's going to begin in the Horn of Africa. 60 days. By 90 days, cholera will be spreading in refugee camps. By day 120, we'll start losing children by the tens of thousands. South Asia will follow in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, where 2 billion people already face climate-driven food insecurity as it is. And now we're going to add to that diesel bans, fertilizer collapse, port shutdowns, export bans on wheat, rice, and edible oils. What does that look like to you? It looks like the Great Bengal Famine to me, but with smartphones and armed borders. Europe's not going to starve, but it will freeze. Elderly deaths from cold in the UK, Germany, and Poland. It's over petrol pricing in France. 100% the French will be at each other's throats. The collapse of industrial output in Eastern Europe. Political uprising against weak centrist governments. Guaranteed. The United States is not going to be immune. They're going to have mass inflation, gasoline rationing, interstate trucking collapse, and cities that have never been asked to go without. Imagine those people now turning on themselves and each other. The collapse isn't just economic, by the way, it's psychological. When the fuel runs out, the system's legitimacy evaporates. People will ask, why did this happen? Who allowed it? Who profited? And who are we going to blame? And this is where the moral reckoning begins. People are going to ask and say, who is the source? And they're going to say, this didn't happen because of a natural disaster, people. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because two nuclear powers, the US and Israel, pushed one nation into a corner, pushed them far. They didn't bomb cities. They didn't fight fair. They went after Iran's energy infrastructure, knowing full well, I promise you they will. So when that collapse begins, you need to understand, when the accounting starts, it's not just for Israel. It's not just for the United States, but it's for every cowardly Western government that's enabled it. For every bystander government that stayed silent. For every sanction enforcer, every drone operator, for every UN abstention. Every one of these things added a little bit to it. And now I'm going to point my fingers at China, Russia, India, Brazil. Where are you guys? Where are your envoys? Where are your back channels? Where are your red lines? Because in this scenario, so far you've all stayed quiet. And now your own people are going to be starving because you let this happen. You let this get too far. This isn't just the collapse of supply. It's the collapse of credibility. It's the death of Western moral authority. The death of international order. And it's the beginning of a century. And I promise you, defined not by cooperation, but by the retaliation of the poorest people on you people, the governments, the people in charge. You know, one other thing I forgot to mention I want to talk to you about is the spare capacity, because some countries have got spare capacity. So the oil, for instance, is, let's say it's gone. The Gulf has gone dark. Pipelines are shattered. Refineries are rubble. The world starts asking the final question, who else can produce more oil here? And let's just look around. I think, you know, it's fair to ask, let's scan the globe. Who's left? So Russia will still be able to produce, because I don't think there'll be any sanctions on them once that happens. And their current output is 9 to 10 million barrels per day. And their export capacity is maybe 4 to 5 million, I think. But the increase that they can supply with what they've got is 1 million barrels per day at best. And that's with all sanctions lifted, pipelines, all of them reactivated, and a willingness to sell to countries that just try to strangle them. Russia can help, but it's not going to save us. It's not enough. The other country I would suggest would be Venezuela, once an oil giant, but now a cautionary tale, I would say. Years of mismanagement, sanctions, equipment decay that needs to be upgraded. It still has massive reserves. You know, but the production sits barrels a day, which is nothing. So the best case scenario for them in the short term, add 500 to 800,000 barrels, but only with US approval and international investment and American, you know, capacity being brought in to help them. So I'm not going to be holding my breath for Americans to be able to do much about that. Brazil is a bright spot. They've got deep water oil, modern rigs, strong export potentials, but it's still isolated, expensive, logistically slow to scale, and possible surplus maybe 300,000 to 500,000 barrels per day. These numbers are not things that I've come up with, by the way. These are all numbers that I have researched, and I've done a lot of work over the last 24 hours and done a lot of what you call deep research into like the different AI engines, verified them by looking at the sources, not just, every single one of them has come from a source. So you got to understand. Anyway, who else is there? There's Canada as well. Canada's got heavy crude, but the problem is it's the transport bottlenecks. Production is, it sits high, but exports are landlocked, and without more pipelines, spare capacity is maybe 300,000 per day, if lucky, and it all has to go south to the US. It's not going to help India, Africa, or Europe. Africa and Central Asia, Nigeria, I think, is plagued, I would say, by theft and sabotage. Libya is stuck in a civil war. Angola in long-term decline. Kazakhstan is is reliant on pipelines going through Russia. Azerbaijan is a minor player collectively. Maybe between all of these countries, they could add 1.2 million barrels per day. And that's with everything going right, which we all know it won't, because there'll be a problem with somewhere with some of these people. So the total global spare capacity region, extra capacity, Russia 1 million, Venezuela 500,000, as I said, Brazil about 500,000, Canada about 0.3, 300,000, Africa 1.2, total 3 to 4 million barrels per day. You try and compare that to what we've lost, 25 to 30 million, even with the extra oil from oil shale and everywhere else. 3 to 4 million barrels per day available. That's not even the 85% shortfall. There's no miracle. There's no bailout. There's no backup plan with this. There's no resilience in the oil markets should the Gulf go up. And remember that none of this can be scaled quickly. And none of it is going to be able to replace the Gulf crude blends, because they are specific blends. And none of this will help within the first year. And I've told you the story of what's going to happen in the first year. Every so-called alternative is a mirage in the sand for me. I don't think they're going to be able to help. And we need to understand that China is the engine of the world economically. It's the factory of the world. And if they went dark, we talk about oil in terms of barrels, in terms of dollars, in terms of war. But what happens when the world's largest oil importer and the engine of the global manufacturing gets cut off from oil? Because make no mistake, China cannot function without Gulf oil. Over 50% of its crude imports come from Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, and all of them are going to be offline. Because if those are, as I'm saying, in my scenario, they're destroyed, they're gone. China's going to lose 5 to 6 million barrels per day, gone. No replacements, no reroutes. So what's China going to be able to do? First thing it's going to do is tap its strategic reserves, estimated maybe, let's say, 400 to 500 million barrels. That's going to buy them 60 to 90 days. That's enough time to freeze industrial output, shut down non-essential sectors, implement rationing, repatriate the fuel for the military. It's going to prioritize it for them, and for food and for logistics, so the people won't have it. But let's put it say, even if China, with all its command power, discipline, and central control, it's not going to be able to conjure oil out of thin air. Without imports, their coastal factories grind to a halt. Exports, the contracts are cancelled. Inflation spikes. Unemployment explodes. Guaranteed social unrest will simmer. And remember, China doesn't just serve itself. It's the assembly line of the whole planet. If China stops, so do your iPhones, your solar panels, the medical devices, laptops. My MacBook comes from China. Electrical cars, power inverters, air conditioners, network components, pharmaceuticals. The global export chain fractures. And no one's going to be able to fill that void. Not India, not Vietnam, not Mexico, and not Europe. So what does China do next? It's going to reorient itself geopolitically. It's going to strengthen its ties with Russia. It's going to accelerate military preparations and preparedness. It's going to look down energy routes and say, I'm going to lock that down, and it's going to be through Central Asia. And it quietly and very quietly lets the global south know that this is what Western aggression brings: collapse. China will survive, but I don't think the global economy, it won't survive. That's what I think. The global economy just will not. So I'm going to come to the last thing that I want to talk to you about, and that is, again, the moral question. Was all of this worth it? So let's just step back, and I want to take a breath and ask the only question that matters now. Was it worth it in the end? Would it be worth tipping the world into collapse to ensure that one regime, armed to the teeth, nuclear capable, with absolute US protection, could continue to bomb, starve, occupy, ethnically cleanse, commit a genocide without fear of consequence? Would it be worth it to have 1.5 billion people in fuel crisis? Will it be worth to have 2 billion people at risk of food insecurity? Is it worth it having nations falling? Children starving all over the world? Energy blackouts? Climate reversal? Just so one apartheid government could feel secure? This isn't about Iran. It's about the principle. The principle that no country, no ideology, no political project has the right to gamble with the survival of the entire human race. Because that's what this is. This is not war. This is an extinction protocol. This is a point where the economy of life itself becomes the collateral of the delusions of empire. And I'm going to talk plainly here. Let's say what no politician will say. This did not happen by accident. This was not inevitable. This was engineered by people in Washington, in Tel Aviv, in Brussels, who knew exactly what they were doing. And when they attack the energy systems with full knowledge, I hope they watch this, because that retaliation is going to break the world. And if they want to pretend that they're shocked by these consequences, then they are liars. And it's not just down to them. There are others here as well. For me, the leaders that have said nothing, I'm talking about Russia, China, and India at the moment, who've sat at the table, who knew what was coming, and who've chosen caution over confrontation. And what about the UN? What of the so-called international community? All of them have stood back. All of them have allowed this escalation. All of them are going to have to share the blame. This isn't just a geopolitical collapse. It's a spiritual one. We have shown the world that we are governed by cowards. We are led by warmongers. And We're restrained by institutions is the best way. That couldn't stop a fucking car crash. Even if they saw it coming from space, they're not stopping it. So here's my final question. When's the next war going to begin? When's the next refinery going to burn? When's the next blockade going to starve out the next city? Will we say we didn't know, or we will admit that we knew and chose not to care? I really do hope that people who have half a brain and who are in power will listen to what I've set out. This is apocalyptic. This is doomsday for my son and for the sons of billions of people. I really do hope that Israel and America pull back, and I hope that Iran does the same, because what we don't need is more war. We need people to start talking. So I'm going to end it there, but I really do think people need to talk to their governments and get them to understand that if they don't do something, we are looking at the worst 10 years of our lives. The whole of the Gulf is going to be gone, and the planet is going to go backwards. Good night.